Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is August 13th. On this day in 2018, the quiet community of Frederick, Colorado was rocked by a disappearance that, within hours, would grip the nation. A pregnant mother and her two little girls had vanished. And within days, the picture-perfect image of the Watts family would collapse, revealing a truth so disturbing that it shocked the entire country. Today, we're discussing the murders of Shanann, CeCe, and Bella Watts. Let's get started. The morning of August 13th, 2018 started quietly. At 1:48 a.m., Shanann Watts, who was 34 years old and 15 weeks pregnant, returned home after a business trip. Her friend and colleague Nicole Atkinson had dropped her off. But by the time the sun came up, Shanann and her two little girls were gone. Later that morning, Nicole began texting Shanann, but there was no answer. By midday, her concern was mounting. Shanann had missed a doctor's appointment and skipped a scheduled business meeting, things that her friends knew she would never do without letting someone know. By 12:10 p.m., Nicole was at the Watts' house, knocking and ringing the doorbell. But there was nothing. Inside, she could hear the family dog barking. She called Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, who said he was at work. Nicole insisted on a welfare check. At around 1:40 p.m., police arrived. They found Shanann's purse, her phone, which was wedged between couch cushions, her keys, and even her wedding ring. The car seats for the couple's two daughters, Bella and Celeste, were still inside of the garage. But there was no sign of Shanann, the girls, or any clue as to where they had gone. That afternoon, Chris stood outside the family home giving TV interviews, pleading for their safe return. On the surface, it looked like a desperate father begging for help, but some watching closely already sensed that something was off. Unbeknownst to the public, a neighbor's security camera had caught Chris in the early hours of that morning making trips to his truck and loading items into the back. He'd backed the truck into the garage out of view from the street before pulling away. When police showed Chris the footage in the neighbor's living room, he avoided eye contact and offered strange, overly detailed explanations about tools and work gear. The body cam footage that was released later showed a man who was panicking. To the outside world, the Watts family was all smiles. Shanann regularly posted her life on social media. There were videos of the girls singing, the family celebrating milestones, and pregnancy updates. But behind the scenes, the marriage was unraveling. That summer, Chris had started an affair with a co-worker, Nicole Kessinger. Friends later said that Shanann had grown suspicious. She confided to one friend that Chris had told her that he, quote, didn't want the baby, end quote. On August 15th, 2 days after her disappearance, investigators asked Chris to take a polygraph test. He agreed, and he failed. After the test, agents brought in his father, Ronnie. Sitting across from his dad, Chris's composure cracked. At first, he offered a false story and basically blamed Shanann. But soon, he began to admit that he had killed her. At the same time, investigators were combing through Chris's phone. They saw the contact for Nicole Kessinger appear in June, just as his marriage began to fracture. Shanann had been fighting to save their relationship. She'd even ordered a relationship counseling book called Hold Me Tight. Chris had thrown it away. Chris eventually told investigators that the body of Shanann and his two children were at a remote Anadarko petroleum site where he worked. Guided by his statements and phone location data, officers drove out to a lease near Rogan, Colorado. There, in a shallow grave, they found Shanann's body. Not far away were two massive oil tanks. Inside each one were the remains of Bella, age 4, and Celeste, age 3. The autopsy reports were devastating. Shanann had been strangled, and Bella and Celeste had been smothered. The girls had been placed through the small 8-inch hatches of the oil tanks, a detail that horrified even veteran investigators. The Weld County District Attorney charged Chris Watts with 3 counts of first-degree murder, tampering with a human body, and 1 count of unlawful termination of a pregnancy. The evidence, the security footage, text messages, GPS data, and Chris's own shifting statements left little doubt about what had happened. By November, prosecutors had a case strong enough to seek the death penalty. But Shanann's family asked them not to. They didn't want years of appeals. They didn't want more death. They just wanted closure. On November 6, 2018, Chris pleaded guilty to all counts. On November 19th, Judge Marcelo Kopkow sentenced him to 5 life terms without the possibility of parole, 3 consecutive and 2 concurrent. He received an additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy and 36 years for the 3 charges of tampering with a deceased body. In court, the judge called the murders, quote, the most inhuman and vicious crime, end quote, he had ever seen. For his safety, Chris was moved out of Colorado's prison system to Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. 3 months later, in February 2019, Chris sat down for a 5-hour interview with investigators. This time, he said he wanted to, quote, clear the air. What he revealed was even more chilling. He described arguing with Shanann in their bedroom, telling her that the marriage was over. He claimed that she told him he'd never see the girls again. He then strangled her, wrapped her body in a sheet, and loaded it into his truck. Before leaving, he smothered Celeste. Bella may have still been alive when she reached the oil site. He said that she asked, "Is Mommy okay?" before he killed her too. The case sparked massive public fascination. Netflix's American Murder: The Family Next Door would later tell the story through Shanann's own social media posts, text messages, and police footage, giving the victims their voices back. August 13th, 2018 was the day that a smiling family portrait became a crime scene. Nan, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico were more than victims. They were a mother and children who deserved safety, love, and a future. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If you found this story compelling, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!